It's a very little known fact that for a long time, certain elements of the US government and military operatives have carefully watched alien abductees. With that said, let's have a close look at some of the most intriguing and fascinating examples. One of the world's most famous alien abductions of all time. Be Betty and Barney Hill. They were abducted on the night of September 19th, 1961. This happened while they were returning to their New Hampshire home after a vacation in Canada. The pair was subjected to a stressful, intrusive medical procedure on board a UFO. They said that their abductors were non-human things with penetrating, staring eyes. The US Air Force soon opened a file on the Hill affair. On the night it happened, they were driving back. The sky was black and filled with stars. The roads were winding. A backdrop of huge mountains dominated much of the drive. In New Hampshire, at around 10:40 p.m., they noticed something in the skies above them. It was not at all far away. Whatever it was, the brightly lit vehicle was not a regular aircraft. It wasn't a helicopter either. A sense of anxiety mixed with puzzlement and foreboding enveloped the pair. This feeling came over them very quickly. The Hills could only speculate on what it was that was in the sky, so they tried to get a better view of the thing. Betty was already intrigued to the max by the presence of the futuristic-looking vehicle. She suggested to Barney that he should pull the car over to the side of the road and grab his pair of binoculars. It was at a picnic near Twin Mountain that Barney was able to stop the vehicle and see that whatever the object was, it definitely was no aircraft, even though it did have porthole-type windows which could be seen fairly clearly. Betty excitedly looked carefully through the binoculars. She too was convinced that the craft was definitely out of the ordinary. The pair sat in awe. As they approached Franconia Notch, a pass in the vast White Mountain National Forest, the two got an even better look at the craft. It moved silently and effortlessly above giant firs, pines, and spruces. The Hills looked on amazed as the clearly rotating object performed all manner of astonishing maneuvers in the sky. It briefly hovered, then raced away at high speed, and finally returned to hang ominously in the air near their car. The pair continued to look on when two wings emerged from the sides of the craft, giving every impression that it was about to land. It turns out that their instincts were right on the money. The craft descended and came to a silent, smooth landing near their car. A deep sense of unease washed over Betty and Barney. The two of them sat there, frozen. They watched as a hatch slowly opened on the side of the vehicle. From the opening, beings emerged. They were unlike anything the Hills had ever seen before. They were small in stature, with large, almond-shaped eyes that seemed to pierce right through them. The Hills were soon beckoned inside the craft. Once inside the craft, Betty and Barney were led into a brightly lit room. The walls were smooth and metallic. They could see strange panels glowing softly. The atmosphere was sterile and almost clinical, but it was unlike any hospital or lab they had ever seen. The beings instructed them through a direct mental connection. They told them to remain still. The first thing Betty noticed was a device that resembled a thin rod with a glowing tip. One of the beings gently traced it along her skin, causing a faint tingling sensation. Then, to her horror, she felt a sharp, cold probe pressed near her eyes. Barney was subjected to similar scrutiny. Strange instruments hovered over his body, scanning him in ways that he could not comprehend. At one point, he was commanded telepathically to raise his arms, exposing his torso. The beings then used a device that emitted a soft blue light, which moved systematically over his chest and abdomen. It was as if it was mapping the internal structure beneath his skin. Both Betty and Barney recalled a series of procedures that seemed to examine their reproductive systems. For Betty, this involved what felt like an internal probe. Barney experienced a similar examination that left him feeling exposed and vulnerable. Throughout the ordeal, the beings remained impassive. Their large eyes were simply fixed intently on their tasks. There was no sense of malice, but the clinical nature of the procedure was chilling. Betty later reported that one of the beings appeared to study her eyes closely, holding a small device that emitted a soft beam of light. She said it seemed to peer directly into her mind. The Hills also noticed a large circular screen in the room where images of themselves were displayed. They thought it was possibly as part of the being's observation or recording process. There was an overwhelming feeling that every single moment was being documented. As the experiments concluded, the beings appeared to communicate something reassuring through telepathy. They did not communicate words, but implanted a feeling inside of them. They were then escorted back to the craft's exit. Almost instantly, the ship rose silently into the night sky, vanishing from sight. In the days and weeks that followed, Betty and Barney struggled to piece together their memories. They experienced vivid dreams, flashbacks, and moments of unexplained anxiety. Eventually, under hypnosis, both recalled the event in greater detail, confirming many of the terrifying and bewildering experiences from that night. Their story was investigated by the US Air Force, which opened a file on the incident. Despite official attempts to explain the encounter as a case of mistaken identity or psychological stress, the Hills remained steadfast in their account. Let's have a look at some cases where abductees have been watched by government personnel. May 23, 1973. The alien abduction experience of Judy Durante. While driving near Houston, Texas late at night, she encountered a disc-shaped UFO. Following a series of bad dreams, it became clear that there was a period of missing time in Durate's recollections of what happened to her. Upon being hypnotized by UFO researcher Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Durate recalled the portion of the event which had been almost completely erased from her mind. She described seeing a calf being taken aboard the UFO, like it was being sucked up. Durate also recalled being taken on board the craft. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations at Kirtland Air Force Base opened up a secret file on Durate and her experience immediately. This was prompted by the unique nature of her kidnapping. Durate was thought to have only been abducted because she had stumbled upon a so-called cattle mutilation event. The implication was that the ETs tried to wipe her memory clean as a means to prevent her from revealing what she had encountered. The FOSI was deeply concerned by the cattle mutilation/alien abduction connection. They also wanted to know every detail of the memory wipe technology that these aliens possessed. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker's late-night kidnapping from the banks of Pascagoula River occurred in October 1973. They recalled under hypnosis that they were taken on board a UFO by creatures with lobster-like claws. The pair became the subject of intense scrutiny by military personnel at Keesler Air Force Base. Intelligence staff at Keesler kept a careful watch on Parker and Hickson for months. They would be constantly, secretly monitoring their activities. They were also brought in for lie detector tests, and their physical and psychological conditions were examined. The pair reported constantly spotting people watching them and noting down their every move. This happened no matter where they went. They were driven to the Air Force Base by a local police officer. His name was Deputy Tom Huntley. He went on to make intriguing statements about the experience. "We were in an unmarked car, but the guards were expecting us and waved us through the moment I said who I was. I looked back through my rearview mirror, and damn if 2 cars full of air police had not fallen in behind us. They had more air police stationed at each crossing all along the road. On being directed to one particular building, a team of medical personnel were already there. They were waiting for the arrival of Hickson and Parker." Huntley said that after he and Parker and Hickson were directed into the building, a series of tests quickly began. Of the doctors, Huntley added that they looked like space creatures, all wrapped in white and masked and gloved. Both men had a Geiger counter ran over them. Their fingers and shoes were swabbed. Each swab was then carefully placed into separate bottles. It was clear the Air Force doctors knew what they were doing and had probably done it many times before. After the examination was completed, Huntley, Hickson, and Parker were escorted to another building. Of this other facility, Officer Huntley stated, "It was something. Armed air police at each door and all along the route, 4 of them in the conference room. And the brass, colonels, majors, the whole base command must have been there, and a heap of doctors too. The intriguing part of this is the extensive security measures taking place. It sounds as if the whole base had been put on alert just for this occasion. The two contactees were so closely guarded during their visit that it seems as if the Air Force expected them to blow up the base themselves. Myrna Hansen's encounter of May 5th, 1980. This occurred as she was heading to Eagle's Nest in New Mexico after a road trip in Oklahoma. Hansen experienced a classic alien abduction experience. Just like Judy Durati 7 years earlier, Hansen saw a young cow being sucked into the UFO. Hansen recalled being taken to an underground facility where aliens implanted her with a sophisticated tracking device. When Hansen described the appearance of the facility, it quickly caught the attention of the AFOSI at Kirtland Air Force Base. The reason that they were so perturbed at what she had described. The facility that she described was an off-limits underground bunker at the base's weapons storage area. They wanted to know how she knew about this place. There was also the implication that the military and the aliens may have been secretly working together, deep underground. Extensive files were opened on Hansen's experience. By the mid-1990s, UFO researcher Greg Bishop struck up a friendship with the late alien abductee, Dr. Carla Turner. She had offered multiple books on the subject. This was the pre-internet era, so the pair corresponded by mail. Greg revealed after Carla's death that mail sent to and from the pair arrived already opened. It would be very clearly torn and resealed. On other occasions, the letters were not even resealed. Both Greg and Carla were convinced that this was all part of some mind-manipulating program. They thought it was a government-driven operation designed to psychologically destabilize the pair by letting them know that the government was watching them. For years, numerous abductees have reported close encounters, but not just with UFOs and aliens, with what have become infamously known as black helicopters. These usually unmarked craft are reported flying over the homes of abductees. On occasion, they will hover over the same homes for minutes at a time. They will always do this at dangerously low levels. Typically, they turn up within a day or two of an alien abduction experience. All of the evidence suggests that the helicopters are piloted by Black Ops teams who have three primary agendas. A. To try and determine the range and scope of alien abductions. B. To frighten the experiencers into staying quiet on their experiences. C. To figure out the true nature of the extraterrestrial agenda. Betty Andreasen was one such target of these helicopters. The number of sightings was so huge that her husband took action. He fired off a letter to the Army's office of the Adjutant General insisting that someone provide answers. No one in any official capacity would own up to anything. All he got was a brief and hardly satisfying reply. All it said was, "It is difficult to determine what particular aircraft is involved or the owning unit." Then there is Ed Conroy. In 1990, Conroy, a journalist, wrote a book on the alien abduction experiences of Whitley Strieber. The more that Conroy delved into the experiences of Strieber, the more he became a victim of black helicopter invasions. Then, there were more mysterious problems with Conroy's answer phone. It seemed as if someone had tampered with it. On one occasion, while Conroy was out of town, his answer phone message was inexplicably changed. In 1993, Whitley Strieber had been given apparently classified information on where the US government's top-secret UFO data could be found. He said that, "Spooks started prowling my neighborhood upstate." A business associate was accosted on an airplane by a group of young men who flashed badges. They claimed to be with the National Security Agency and questioned him about our activities for a couple of hours. On one occasion in the following year of 1994, someone managed to stealthily get into Strieber's cabin. They managed to skillfully disable his security system and checked out the contents of his computer. Conroy found himself under similar intimidation. Weird phone calls, secret surveillance, and even visits from those mysterious black helicopters. On one occasion, at the height of his research into Strieber's story, Conroy encountered something strange. In his very own bedroom, He saw what he described as a kind of a shadow man, completely black, poised in the classic pose of Rodin's The Thinker. It was one particular morning in March 1987 that Ed Conroy found himself a target of the mysterious helicopters. It appeared to be a Bell 47. It lacked any identifying markings. What was remarkable about this particular helicopter was the inordinate amount of attention it seemed to be paying to my building. In no time, and shortly after the Bell 47 finally exited the area, a totally black helicopter was on the scene too. Follow-up visits occurred, which prompted Conroy to contact the Federal Aviation Administration for answers. He had no luck there. Things got even more intense in 1988, when Conroy was practically seeing helicopters everywhere, mostly always in the direct vicinity of his apartment. These even included the huge, double-rotor military Chinooks. Conroy even saw some of the helicopters vanish, literally vanish, right before his very eyes. It seemed like some kind of stealthy, cloaking technology that they had. There are claims that deep within the heart of the Department of Homeland Security, there exists a small group that secretly and actively monitors the alien abduction issue. Much of this is undertaken by keeping a careful watch on social media, as well as websites, blogs, lectures, conferences, and books. The DHS group is allegedly secretly compiling an extensive database of alien abductees in the United States. On occasion, DHS agents have visited the homes of abductees, warning them not to talk about their UFO abduction experiences. In recent years, such actions may have been interpreted as so-called Men in Black encounters. Many abductees report that after being kidnapped by ETs, they are soon abducted by other forces, not aliens, but military personnel who are usually dressed in black, SWAT-style outfits. Those who have reported such experiences describe being taken to underground installations where they are interrogated and questioned about their encounters. Military personnel revealed to the abductees the government's belief that the aliens are creating underground armies. They apparently believe that when fully mind-controlled by the aliens, will one day turn upon the rest of the population. Evidence of serious government concerns about the real alien abduction phenomenon continued into the 1950s, specifically in 1959. That was the year in which a young American soldier found himself caught up in a very strange saga that still disturbs him to this very day. It all went down on a chilly night in Utah's expansive desert. Be Private Bernard Jerry Irwin. Be February 20th, 1959. It began as a regular day for Irwin. At the time, Irwin was driving to Fort Bliss from Idaho. Irwin was actually stationed at Fort Bliss. Idaho was his home state. Night began to set in. The night was dark, silent, and all but empty of vehicles. It was a desert highway, so this was to be expected. As he drove along the winding, curving road, Irwin was suddenly distracted by a bright light in the night sky. The light was at a distinctly low level, and then descended below a looming ridge. Irwin thought it could be any number of things. His instincts told him it was an aircraft in distress. With that in mind, he brought his car to a stop at the side of the road and turned on the blinkers. He quickly got out and left a note for passing drivers. It read, "I have gone to investigate what looks like a plane crash about 1/4 mile to my right. Notify state police immediately." Wearing his army coat and armed with a flashlight, Irwin headed off. Irwin headed for what he suspected just might be the site of a plane crash. The next thing Irwin remembered was waking up in a hospital bed in Cedar City. Where and why, he did not know. A doctor and a nurse were standing around the bed and were soon to be joined by a local county sheriff. Irwin was confused and scared, which is not surprising. The other three were far more interested in finding out what had gone on. Irwin kept muttering about survivors, asking the nurse and the doctor if there were any. Were they all killed? Who they might have been, it seems that no one really knew. That included Irwin, whose mind was in complete turmoil. The doctor then broke the news. Irwin had been unconscious for a full day and night. It was only thanks to a passing warden with the Fish and Game Commission who came across Irwin's car that Irwin was ever found. The police were soon on the scene. Irwin was finally found, completely unresponsive, about a quarter of a mile away from the road. It was in the early hours, before Irwin was finally resting in an unfamiliar bed. Irwin was kept under observation for several days, but remained unable to recall any of the events from that strange night. Military personnel soon appeared on the scene to fly Irwin back to Fort Bliss, where he was placed under additional observation by a military medical team. Irwin continued to collapse and suffer further memory loss for the next few weeks. Irwin never managed to recover any of his other memories of that night. On April 19th, Irwin traveled back to the site and found his missing jacket. This jacket had a pencil and a bit of paper tucked into it. Irwin burned this paper and then seemed to emerge from a trance. He had no idea why he had gone back. He reported this to his superiors and underwent more examinations. On August 1st, Irwin failed to report for duty. He was then listed as AWOL. After this, he vanished from the public record. He was never officially discharged, and nothing else was ever heard from him again. His whereabouts and what happened to him are still unknown. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Be me, about 3 years ago. I am lying in bed at night, trying to sleep. I've been lying here for about an hour now. It's now 3 a.m. Suddenly, the room is illuminated with a light blue tint. I sit up completely. I have a dazed feeling from lying there for so long, but it quickly turns to alertness. The light is not coming from a window or any source. It seems to be completely illuminating my bedroom equally from no fixed point. After about 4 seconds, light disappears into the darkness. Transition/fade takes only about a second. I sat there perplexed, not really too afraid. I thought it was maybe a car light, lightning, or something else, and I was just imagining how unnatural it seemed. That is unlikely though, since I live in a rural suburban Pennsylvania. Long driveways, houses far apart, houses far from roads. Not really sure what it was, but I've seen a few people on X talk about blue light illumination like that. Unfortunately, I did not look at a clock to see if there was any time difference. I guess because of the nature of it, light, and a calm color at that, it never really spooked me like some other things. I talked to my mom about it the next day. I've tried looking into it online a few times and could not find anything. Continuing with more, it's kind of a long story though, so it will take multiple messages and probably be a pretty bad green text. Be me, 12 to 13 years old at the time. Move into a new house with my dad. The house is kind of in the middle of nowhere. It is surrounded by woods, very off the beaten path. It's a 25-minute walk to our mailbox/my bus stop kind of thing. The house was owned by my great aunt before she died. The house had years of back taxes, so nobody in my family really wanted to claim it, until my dad broke up with his girlfriend of 10 years and we were staying at my aunt's house. My great aunt was a really nice lady. She was wheelchair bound. I only met her a couple of times as a young kid though. My dad, on the other hand, was a violent alcoholic and dope fiend. This was the reason for his relationship collapse. Dishonorably discharged from the military kind of thing. It got worse after we moved out though, so I spent most of my time avoiding him. I tended to stay in my bedroom most of the time. I would usually eat my meals before he would get home from work and after he slept. I always felt really uneasy in the house alone, but was sort of a nervous kid. We had 3 pit bulls that lived outside, Mo, Curly, and Larry. Blame my dad for the names. After staying there for a few months, I started hearing a sound outside my window at night. This would happen periodically between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. It sounded like a really deep, low growling sound. Sometimes I would hear it over my earphones. Sometimes it would wake me up from a nap. I always imagined it sounded like a mix between a bear and an earthquake. It sounded like it came from right outside my window, like maybe 2 feet away and down on the ground. This would happen for 10 to 30 seconds and then stop for hours or for the entire night. It scared me to death as a kid. It caused me many nights of huddling up in fear in bed. Curly was the dog that was about 15 feet outside my window. None of my dogs were abused and were all treated fairly. I was in charge of feeding them, unleashing and walking them, and we had them since they were puppies. As the months passed, and eventually years, I noticed Curly becoming more timid. He would always crouch down when you went to pet him or shy away from you, as if he were being beaten or abused. At first I didn't connect it, but over time, I started to feel like Curly was deeply afraid of whatever it was outside my window. I felt kind of a kindred spirit in him. Would give him my nose under my breath as I pet him. Every morning, I had to walk to my bus stop. Pennsylvania mornings are dark most of the days, and my uneasy feeling about the house and the growling made it kind of scary for me. I would walk with earphones in, music blaring, resisting the urge to turn around. I always felt like something followed me halfway from my house to my bus stop. I would yell the lyrics loudly, almost as if I was projecting myself enough to scare away whatever it was, or to project enough confidence so it could not feel my fear. As time went on, I grew less scared of whatever it was able to live a life removed from it, though I would still get spooked or unnerved on occasion. I still heard the sound every once in a while and felt something was there, but tried to ignore it. I kept a cardinal rule of never leaving my house when it was dark without people around. Dogs were often quiet at night and did not provide much security. One day, 2 years later, my dad's recent girlfriend was down in my bedroom. Relationship problems. She was venting to me on my bed about my dad. It was about midnight. In the middle of her talking, she heard the growling outside my window. "What's that?" she said nervously. I started explaining kind of quietly, out of slight fear of it somehow hearing me. She sits there petrified and kind of spooked, said, "Oh my God," quietly, then proceeds to walk slowly out of my bedroom, transitioning into a run in the hallway. Tells my dad that there was some large animal growling outside my window. My dad, a big hunter, grabs his gun and goes outside, ready to shoot. He has shot coyotes before outside my house. I watch from the window as he turns on the light and walks around. Nothing there. The growling was happening just about 15 seconds before he walked outside. Did not speak about it too often after this incident in the next year before I moved away. Dad's GF and I occasionally talked about how it was a really weird experience. At least I know it's not just me now. Fast forward to almost a year later. Walking home from girlfriend's house one winter, where the snow was particularly bad. My girlfriend's dad's car got stuck in the snow halfway to my house on the unplowed roads. Growling has still persisted, but I have grown ever more desensitized. I don't even hear it that often, though it's still unnerving when I do. It's about a 40-minute walk until I get to my house. Everybody is snowed in, it's 10 p.m., and there are no cars on the road. The light reflecting off the snow has everything somewhat illuminated, so it is not scary in the slightest. I start hearing cracking sounds and footsteps in the woods as I get closer to my house. I occasionally look around and see nothing there. Eventually, when I am within 10 minutes of my house, I start talking to it, or at least just talking out loud, in the chance that there is something there and listening to me. Why are you following me? What is it you want from me? Are you just gonna follow me around for the rest of your existence? Don't you have something better that you could go and do? I start feeling more motivated and fired up as I continue. It's an empty night, and I have nothing to fear from being louder. I get to the end of my driveway and turn around, looking out into nothing. Well, come on, show yourself. Show yourself or leave. I'm not going to waste my time being afraid of something that is not there or can't even show itself or do anything. Nothing happens, and I walk up to my house. The growling stops after this event. Soon enough, I move away to live with my mom and never hear the growling ever again. Still to this day not sure if I just imagined it, if it was actually somehow my dog, though I heard my dog growl on plenty of occasions and it did not sound like that at all. Some actual animal or something else. I am not a strong believer in the paranormal and keep a pretty agnostic view on things. I've had people tell me that it could have been a demon, an alien playing tricks or monitoring me, and a bunch of other things. I take everything with a grain of salt, but I've never really heard about somebody having a similar experience. I realize it probably sounds like a ridiculous story, but I can assure you it happened. Whether I was delusional and I just pushed away the notion of something being there, or it was actually something paranormal, is something I will probably never know.